Last minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning ride is okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Nice
as simple
ride.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to the NASM-CPT Podcast with Richey, winner of the Share Care Emmy Award for Social Storytelling and the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Hey y'all, and welcome to the NASM-CPT Podcast. My name is Richey, and today we are going to be listen, all right, so I get this question a lot. Hey Rick, what's on the test? What's on the exam? Can you help me out with the exam? What should I think about the exam? I'm taking the exam in 2 weeks. I haven't really studied. Can you help me with the exam? And the answer is yes, sorta, because I have already done 12 episodes that serve as a study guide to the NASM-CPT-7. I've done it. But the problem is, if you don't know it's there, then how do you know to listen? So today's episode is going to be kind of a review, not the stuff that we've already gone over, but basically telling you what's in those 12 episodes. And here's what you're going to do. If you want links to those episodes, because they're not even uploaded in order. Sometimes I'd do an episode on a study guide, and then I'd do another episode, and then a week might pass and I do another episode. I have links, and all you have to do is either email me and say, you know, I'm here for the study guides, and I will email you back with the links of everything, including the PDF study guide that I'm going to kind of go over today, and the links that where I go in much more in depth in each section. So what you're going to do is you're going to either email me and say, send me the study guide, or you're going to hit me up at dr.rickrichey on Instagram. And you are going to say, I would like the study guides. And then you are going to provide your email. I will email you with all the links, including the link what we're about to go over right now. Now, what I'm going to go over right now is the CPT exam study guide. You probably were delivered this. If not, there is a website. So let's see, it's nasm.org/docs/NASM libraries. Anyway, you can find it from there, or I will also, when I send you the links to the podcast episodes, 12 podcast episodes used as a study guide, I will also send you to the link to this, the NASM-CPT-7 exam study guide, and what the first entire section is about. Professional development and responsibility, chapter 1. So you're going to have several sections or several domains, and then you're going to have chapters. And so the first chapter is the modern state of health and fitness that you'll go into. You'll learn a little bit more about the lumbopelvic hip complex, some different types of dysfunction, obesity, the way that we interact. That's going to be important. Chapter 2 is the personal training profession. So we're going to look at what's it like to be working at a health club, working with people in home, having options as a personal trainer, what that looks like, building rapport. What do you need to do with your taxes? Looking at different components between the social media, marketing, things like that. The 4 Ps, product, price, promotion, and place. All of those things are going to be in section 1. Section 2, client relations and behavioral coaching. So chapter 3 is about the psychology of exercise. I got to be honest, this plays a very important role in actually getting people to exercise, because it's not just, did you show up at the gym and do the work? Because let's say you train somebody an hour a week, 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, 3 hours a week. There's 168 hours in the week. what are they doing with the rest of the time, the other 165 hours? Hopefully about a big third of that is sleeping. But what happens with the rest of that time? And if we don't create this intrinsic motivation for them to get out and move and be more active, there's only so much that we can do here at the gym. Now, it's important, and I obviously, my entire career has been about that. But can we empower people to do things on their own, to be more active, to stand more, to walk more, to move more, less sitting, less reclining? And what can we do about the ambivalence towards exercise and or movement or physical activity? Now, there's a lot of information there, and in this guide, that's going to be very helpful with kind of understanding that. Behavioral coaching, chapter 4. Clients expect professionalism, but we're also going to look at program designs that's based on what people's goals are and what their concerns are. We go into self-efficacy, self-monitoring, a lot of different things in order to help people get their best outcomes, but giving some of that onus to them. Also, we go into talking about SMART goals, which, as much as we talk about SMART goals, I am concerned how little people actually implement SMART goals. Now, SMART goals should be anchoring. It should be, you come in, you told me what you want, they're specific, we can measure it. It's not this this kind of ethereal concept of what we're trying to do, and conceptually it looks like this, and a dream of life gone by. No, specific. Get real with it. Specific. Measure it. Make sure it's attainable. Make sure it's relevant to what they're trying to accomplish, and then put a time on it. We're going to do this by this. And if you've got a huge goal to get to, you chunk that down into smaller bits, make it a smaller time, because the only way you're going to get to the big bit is by doing the smaller bits along the way. Break it down, make your plan as such. Section 3. Basic and applied sciences and nutritional concepts. So chapter 5, nervous system, muscular system, skeletal systems, all about the human movement system. All right. What do we talk about? The different types of nerves, the afferent and efferent, central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord, the peripheral nervous systems, the somatic and autonomic nervous systems, the PNS, the CNS, the cognitive, and so much to consider. And that's why the study guide can be very helpful at directing your thoughts. Skeletal system. We got to know them bones. We got to know the bones, the axial and appendicular. What types of bones are they? What are the bones called? They have names. Give it a name. What are the names? The muscular system. We're going to go into the muscular system. You need to be familiar with the major muscles in the body and what they do, what effects they have on the joints, what type of muscle fibers exist in the body, the all or none principle. All of these concepts, they need to be anchored in your brain prior to going into the exam. And on each of these kind of major sections, there's an entire podcast. Again, if you want that, then you reach out to me, hit me up on Instagram at dr.rickrichey, say that you want the links, and give me your email address. Don't just say that you want the links, because then I'm going to be like, hey, can you send me your email address? And then you go, oh yeah, the email address. Just start with the email address and save me a few steps, because this should bring a lot of people to the yard. It's like a milkshake. Chapter 6, the cardiorespiratory, endocrine and digestive systems. Now, these are obviously very important, but we can only go so deep into this content. This is CPT-7, basic understanding of this. Now, cardiorespiratory will probably spend a little more time than the endocrine and digestive systems because of the effect that the cardiorespiratory system has on exercise and the effect that exercise has on the cardiorespiratory system. But the endocrine is not far behind. I love knowing that just activating muscles, just muscle contraction can stimulate the release of chemokines and myokines, things that make your brain function better, that make you feel better, that make you function better. This is why people that exercise don't shut up about it, because it's nice. It feels good. And so, therefore, there's a lot of content that goes through the cardiorespiratory system, endocrine system, and digestive systems. And you get into things like cortisol, of course, a growth hormone, testosterone, thyroid hormones, what sleep has to do with any and all of this, and then get a better understanding of that type of content. Moving into Chapter 7, Human Movement Science. Movement described in 3 basic planes of motion: sagittal, frontal, transverse. Understanding the planes of motion, how the movement works, what it means, what are the joint actions that happen in the sagittal plane, which joint actions take place in the frontal, which take place in the transverse. What are the movements of the scapula? What are the movements at the foot and ankle? What's an agonist, a synergist, a stabilizer, an antagonist? What are these muscles? What's open and closed chain? What's the stretch shortening cycle? All of this. Be familiar with that information, because that information is going to be vital for what it is that you need to do when it comes to taking your CPT-7. Now, with this said, I know we're talking about people right now who are preparing to take the CPT-7, but y'all, if you've been training for a long time, this stuff that we're talking about right now, some of this stuff is so deep in the doldrums, in the labyrinth of your mind, that it's really great just to get the opportunity to study it again. And you may not have to sit down and open your book like people who are studying for the exam. Only thing that you may need to do is hear that podcast again. Click the link, listen to the podcast, and be like, that's right. That's right. Now I remember that. And suddenly, just from hearing these things, allows you to go back and provide perspective to your clients, provide an insight to your clients, change or tweak the program to make it make more sense for your clients. And that's available to you. Even as a very veteran trainer, you may be able to take this content and apply it now. Because, sometimes the smartest we'll ever be is right after we've studied for an exam, and then we just let that information go down the drain. And this could be something that sparks information, sparks more in you, and just reminds you of what's there. Like Chapter 8, Exercise, Metabolism, and Bioenergetics. We talk about substrate. We talk about ATP. ATP turns into ADP, and then ADP is going to turn back to ATP. What are we talking about when it comes to glycolysis and glycogen, and how glucose is stored, the aerobic and the anaerobic pathways? There's a lot of great information to be reacquainted with if you've been doing this for a long time, or if you're new to it. This is some really good information to make sure that you are familiar with things like the total daily energy expenditure, resting metabolic rate, thermic effect of food, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, exercise activity thermogenesis. That's powerful information that you own and you get to take to your clients who are paying you good money so that you can provide information that helps them better reach their goal. And that goal should be very specific, should be measured, attainable, and relevant to them. And then let's put a timeline on it. So you can always say, we're trying to hit this by this time. And that puts them in a place where they can be focused and they can be determined, because there is a timeline that we're aiming for. So everyone works together more completely. They work more outside of their time with you, because the time they work with you isn't just the time they work with you. You're preparing them for what to do outside of the training session. Chapter 9 is nutrition. Now, we can talk a little bit about nutrition when we're not registered or licensed dietitians. we are fitness professionals. So we can provide general nutritional guidelines, but what can we do to maximize what we can provide to them? What type of credibility can we bring to the table? Now, some of it is making sure that we are familiar with nutrition. I mean, protein, carbs, fat, the calories associated with each of them, amino acids and the amino acid profile, the essential amino acids, which are amino acids that we must get from food because we cannot produce them. The role of protein, the recommended daily allowance. So we're trying to get a lot of information to provide for people when it comes to nutrition, not because we are giving them a very specific meal plan, but we're trying to understand, first of all, our scope of practice and the scope at which we can teach and train and encourage them to make better choices in their diets. And then chapter 10, which kind of goes along with that, is supplementation. And what are the supplements that make sense? What are some of the things that we can provide? What are some of the things to stay away from? What will help us with our performance goals? What will help us when it comes to coffee? Because that's where I always go to. There's a lot of data about coffee and but a lot of information about creatine and about protein supplementation. So understanding our scope of practice, what that means for us, and how we can move forward. All right, let's go on into our live read for the commercial. Here it is. This episode of the NASM-CPT Podcast is brought to you by NASM-1, the membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources. Get the Edge app to schedule and program clients. Enjoy half off all certifications and specializations. Access free CEUs and more. All of this for just $35 a month. Go to nasm.org/membership to learn more about NASM-1. Nice. All right, now we're moving on into chapter 12, posture, movement, and performance assessments. Here we'll talk about static posture and different fun words like pes planus and lower cross syndrome and upper cross syndrome. These are all different types of patterns that we see in people, things that we can assess and address, and then doing different assessments, going into that overhead squat assessment, single leg squat assessment, pushing assessment, pulling assessment, pressing assessments. All of these assessments give us a chance to watch people move. And there are some other performance-based assessments that might include sprinting and stepping and treadmill test, but all of these are opportunities to do really one major thing: track progress. See where you are, identify what you need in regard to movement, and then fill that in as you go along. So we are now filling in the blanks that says, okay, initially we saw this type of movement, the knees knock together, the feet turn out, the low back arch. When you did a squat, you did a single leg squat, the knees were wobbly on one side and the knees adducted or knocked in on the other side. What do we do? Do we just say, all right, cool, I've got that information. It's a really good sales tool. So now let me just go and do whatever I would plan on doing anyway, which are more squats. I don't think so. I think it is a good sales tool. Doing assessments can be a very valuable sales tool, but it's only a valuable assessment beyond a sales tool if you reassess and you track progress. And that's what we're trying to do. Chapter 13 talks about the integrated training model, the OPT model. The integrated training model, you go through all of these different components of a workout. So there's core, balance, plyometric, there's mobility, there's resistance training, there's flexibility training, there's cardio respiratory training. There are components of a workout. And then you can practice all of that and identify, well, what are my postural things that I'm going to look at? And then how can I include stabilization, strength, and power, and how that's all integrated together? Because really what I think is kind of interesting is that people like to fetter the NASM into saying, oh, they're very rigid. And when you really think about the NASM model, first of all, it's a model. It's not a mandate. It is a model or a guide. But secondly, there are so few course content providers that actually will say, look at all the things you can do. And here we say, look at all the things that you can do, but then we just give you steps in order to accomplish it, as opposed to, I don't like doing that because I haven't done it that way, or another certification didn't do it that way. NASM likes to stand on one leg and do things with bands. We're providing you in that particular phase, in that particular training phase, in that particular level of training, that standing on one leg is an option that you may want to incorporate, and we provide reasons. But then we say you can also do the other stuff, which in this level and in this phase, you can do that, as opposed to saying all we do is this one level in this one phase, and then everything you do for the rest of your training is just going to be there. Here, there are options and options and options, and you follow that until you become quite the recipe. When you've given this recipe and it's all together, and then you don't become the recipe, you become the chef. You do it for a while. And I got to say, I've been doing personal training since 2002. I've never not been a personal trainer since 2002. And I got to be honest, I've gotten a lot of education far beyond my NASM certification since 2002. And I still use the NASM OPT model, as a base for how I do my workouts. Why? Because it's a great model to follow. Now, I have a lot of things that I bring in and things that I've learned, but it all fits within the model. So you find out where your education, what all you know already, fits in to this model. Because you can apply pretty much anything. It's just, when do you apply it? And I think that's an important concept to pay attention to. Speaking of concepts, chapter 14, flexibility training concepts. We're going to learn about flexibility and mobility and range of motion around a joint, and the different components, whether we look at you look at corrective flexibility, active flexibility, or dynamic flexibility, and what are the components under each of them, like self-myofascial rolling and static stretching are types of corrective. If you don't need corrective, then you can move on to active. Active flexibility still can include self-myofascial rolling, and you may just apply that rolling in a different manner. And then you do active flexibility, which is using the agonist to take an antagonist through its range of motion. You use strength to stretch, and you hold it for a moment, and you go in and out of that. Or you can go into dynamic flexibility, which is a type of functional flexibility. Functional flexibility is, do you have the flexibility to do what you need to do in your life? And that is different for different people. Like a martial artist and a dancer, especially like a ballet dancer, might have a totally different flexibility need than a college baseball or softball player. Just the different flexibility needs. And you can apply as needed to the functional flexibility. And there's a lot of great content there in the flexibility. Moving to chapter 15, respiratory fitness training, where we go into things like the FIT VP principle, which is frequency, intensity, time, type, enjoyment, volume, and progression. But there's a lot of other content in there you need to know and understand, things like VT1, VT2, VO2 max. This study guide can help get you there. 16, core training concepts, lumbopelvic hip complex, stabilization, strength and power. How do you apply it? 17, balance training concepts, the ability to stand on a single leg and stabilize. And then can you stabilize and produce force? And then can you dynamically reduce force in things like hops or jumps? Where do you train in your balance programming? And then plyometric programming or reactive training, which is just a way to dynamically initially focusing on reducing force. And then can you stabilize? Most importantly, can you stabilize forces? Can you reduce it? And then only once you can stabilize and reduce force can you really concern yourself with the production of force. And so we'll look at what that looks like. Chapter 19, SAQ, speed, agility, and quickness. Speed, the product of stride rate and stride length, refers to the velocity of distance covered by time. Agility necessitates the ability to start or accelerate, stop, decelerate, and stabilize and change directions while maintaining postural control. And quickness refers to the ability to react to a stimulus and appropriately change motion of the body in response to that stimulus. Stride rate, stride length, running mechanics, all of these things focused in this particular area. And then we look at resistance training. Resistance training, that last little piece of the workout components. And these are the ones where you are going to look at the general adaptation syndrome, the SAID principle, and many different concepts there. And then I'm going to go into this kind of last little piece. And the last little piece to review, and remember, if you want to hear an entire episode about each of these major sections that you need to be familiar with, shoot me an email, hit me up on Instagram, and let me know that you want the study guide links, and I'll send you study guide links. Section 6, program design. Chapter 21 talks about the optimal performance training model. Goes through the different levels and the different phases of the model. And then chapter 22 is the introduction to exercise modalities. Now, the modalities are different. There are barbells, there are dumbbells, there are suspension trainers, there are kettlebells. There are a lot of different ways to go. There are fitness trackers, different ways to track what you do. Free weights, not free weights, expensive weights. There's so many different things that you can look at. And so this goes into the concepts of those different modalities. And then finally, chapter 23, chronic health conditions and special populations, what it's like to work with people when it comes to things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, chronic conditions that many people have. You can also working maybe with special populations could include a little bit of youth, could include a little bit of older clients that you could work with, and their experience is vast and it's different. They have totally different goals than most people. And how do you work with those people and at least understand a little bit better? All right, one more time. If you want the link to this study guide that I just reviewed, along with 12 episodes of the NASM-CPT podcast for the CPT-7 review, hit me up. You can do so on Instagram at dr.rickricchey and just say, hey, here's my email address, and then provide that email address. And then say, I'd like the CPT-7 study guide links. You can also email me, rick.richey@nasm.org. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you being here. I want you to know you got questions. You can also follow up on those emails, on those messages on Instagram. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what's on your mind. I'll take as much time as I can to ensure that I can help you out at least a little bit in what time I have available to answer these. I'll do the best I can with the time that I got. All right, y'all keep inspiring people to fitness. Thanks for listening. This has been the NASM-CPT Podcast.